Hi, so I thought I'd do a little video tonight about connection. Just connection, just that. Because it's the one thing that seems so lacking in today's world, you know? Here we all are, we've got our phones and we're connected like never before across the globe. And yet, loneliness is at epidemic levels and people scrolling on their phones, but they're not connected, you know? And we learned from the pandemic just how vital human connection is, real life human connection. And yet, loneliness is still such a problem. And I was reminded of this tonight. The reason for making this video is because I saw a video on YouTube. And every now and again, I like watching videos about people who come to Jesus because it's really beautiful. Anyone can call on Jesus and they can have a supernatural experience of him. And it's really quite something. But this one lad, if it's real and the testimony sounded real, I wasn't too sure if the video was AI, but I've seen enough real videos over the years to know that such things do exist. And in this video, this lad basically said he'd been vaping, he'd suffered some difficulties, and he sort of clinically died and had a near-death experience. He immediately sort of plucked from his body, went into a void, and saw Jesus. And Jesus was just showing him, just saw himself scrolling endlessly on his phone, just scrolling. And he'd felt so numb and so disconnected. And the vaping was a way to try to sort of offset some of that numbness, some of that feeling of dissatisfaction with life. And I wondered how it must feel for young people now. I think my generation, I'm Generation X, and I think our generation was very lucky because we were out, you know, of weekends, come a weekend, we were out all day long, just doing silly shit, you know. We were just trying to build a sort of treehouse in the forest, or I say the forest, tiny little woods near where we lived, or we'd just be mucking about. We'd be out all day long, yet somehow we'd manage to entertain ourselves. You know, we climb things, we get into things, we go and explore things, and we had this freedom that just wouldn't be possible today. In today's world, you know, it seems so vastly different now, so wildly unsafe out there, you know. And so, and we didn't have all of the problems of today's youth, whereby if you're scrolling on your phone and you're looking at what your mates are getting up to, and it must feel very easy perhaps to slip into a feeling of thinking that you're not living it up as much as your friends, you know. It's very easy to sort of contrast your life on social media to what your friends are doing. And that can be the same for when you get older as well. It isn't just a young person's problem. But young people are perhaps much more trapped inside or used to just being inside, I think, a lot of the time, especially perhaps in cities, but even in the country as well, just all over the place. And the video I watched, it had a nice ending anyway. This kid, he realised that he was too disconnected. He felt this profound sense of peace, which often accompanies a near-death experience, and, you know, came back to his body, and we imagine that all was well, you know. Obviously, he'd realised that perhaps he'd overcooked it, just being on his phone, scrolling endlessly. And allegedly, you know, Jesus, during this encounter, had shown him a picture of thousands of other people doing the same thing, just scrolling on their phones, you know, alone in their bedrooms, etc., kids his age. And he was allegedly told by Jesus, you know, you're the most sort of disconnected generation, you're the loneliest generation. And if true, how sad. And even if that video wasn't true, I think the picture it paints probably is. I think there are many, many people out there who do feel really, really alone. And it's so sad. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about connection and about how to get out there and reconnect again. And I think, as I say, whatever age group you're at, it's going to affect you. And I was reminded of this a little while ago as well when, you know, reading a couple of posts occasionally about dating, modern day dating. You swipe left or you swipe right. And I thought, that strips the romance, doesn't it? It strips the air of mystery and romance right out of the thing. Because whereas if you're out and about and you just happen to meet somebody and your eyes meet across the room and there's this moment of tension, there's this moment of excitement where you just recognise that something has happened, that this isn't an ordinary look. Something has happened. This person might be interested in you, you're interested in them, but it's a feeling. It's an unquantifiable feeling and it's exciting. And yet on your phone, you have to make a decision. And your decisions that you make when swiping left or right are going to perhaps be far more logic-based. Based on logic, reason, pragmatism, much more concrete things than perhaps if you were out and you just met somebody apropos of nothing, you know, as you're out and about just doing your own thing. And I was reminded again of how modern day life can sort of strip the magic and the mystery away from things. And then, of course, there's the quality of the encounters that you have online as well, or the lack of quality in some cases. You know, if you go on X, you find there can be so much anger and hate over relatively little. People seem to knee-jerk react very quickly. And they're all in their heads, they're very angry, they've formulated an argument, there's a whole argument coming for just a little perceived slight. And the key word there is perceived, because often that's just how they've read it and how they've read into the thing. And they don't necessarily realise they're projecting all of their own insecurities or angst or worry, etc. onto this thing that they've read, and then they knee-jerk react and out it all comes. And of course there's also the fact that when you're talking online with people, you're talking into the ether, you're typing into the ether, you're not looking at the person you're talking to, you're not looking when you're writing up this response. And that's key too, because responses you read online, some of them are harsh, some of them are bloody rude, some of them are flippant, some of them are downright nasty. I would wager that 9 times out of 10, if those people were to have conversations in real life with someone, they would talk in a very much different fashion, probably be a lot more polite in the majority of cases. Because there's something about face-to-face contact which incites empathy. It draws the empathy out of you. You look into someone's eyes. You aren't just judging what they're writing, what they're typing onto white space, which always seems quite harsh anyway. You're hearing the tone of voice. You're seeing the person's face, maybe the pain in their eyes, maybe the tiredness. You're picking up on inflection. You're looking at the expression. You're hearing what is said and you're reading into it what is both said and what is unsaid. So there's an awful lot of perception that happens. Communication is about as much as what is actually uttered as what is not. It's about the words, but then the tone and the cadence and the meaning and the facial expression and the body language and all of it. And your mind can perceive an awful lot of that in a very short space of time, maybe just a few seconds. and you can get the tone, you can get the underlying sentiment, the feeling of the thing. And because you're dealing with a real life human and not just words on a page, so too might your response to this person be a little softer, be a little more empathetic, a little bit kinder, you know, because this is person to person contact and it's wildly different. So I'm pretty sure there's evidence out there somewhere to support the idea that people are much less kind, much less empathetic when they're writing online. Plus, I read the other day that there was a study which indicated that once you've had COVID, potentially, because that can alter your brain, potentially lower your IQ points, and also allegedly it can give you a bit of a lack of empathy there as well. Now, whether or not these things are permanent, who's to say? I'd imagine they're probably not because of neuroplasticity. I like to think that things are recoverable after COVID, that various symptoms are. We've heard so much negativity about some of the side effects. But I like to think that given enough recovery time, your body can recover from most of these symptoms. But that's a like to think rather than any sort of idea formulated in science. And I know that some people are adamant that, you know, long COVID, for example, that some symptoms simply do not go after a prolonged period. So who knows? But it's changed. The way we treat each other, the way we are with each other has changed so very much. And I tend to think that 20 years ago, life was a little bit gentler. It's so much more fast-paced now. We're dealing with the news, and the news can often be absolutely horrific. And then we're dealing with people's opinions too. And if you're scrolling on your phone a lot, you're going to be wired for a particular type of response because your nervous system is going to be in disarray and your stress levels are going to be increased. And you're going to be constantly scanning the horizon for threats and maybe perceiving threats where there are none. So you're going to be perhaps responding in a much more knee-jerk fashion anyway than you otherwise would. And again, because of this contact online, forces you to be in your head and not your heart. So you're not bringing your heart along or your soul, not really. You're coming out with responses which are a lot harsher, a lot less kind, a lot less caring. Is that really a world we want to cultivate? Well, no, of course not. And then it's very easy to get locked in to that way of thinking for an entire evening. If you're scrolling on your phone for a whole night, well, then that's going to be your mindset for the whole night if you're not careful. And only you have the power to change that. So you can either stay locked into this very negative mindset, looking at all the ills of the world on, say, X or another social media platform, imagining the world to be very dark and very scary. And while the world is undoubtedly getting more tumultuous and more chaotic, there's a great deal of beauty in it as well. And the world that you will encounter when you leave your front door, I would argue, for the most part, unless you live in quite a dangerous area, I would argue is going to be a lot different to the world as it's presented online. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of dysregulated nervous systems. Perhaps a lot of people who still haven't really come down off the ceiling from their responses during COVID, haven't really calmed their nervous systems down from that. They're still out there and they're still arguing with everybody, anyone and everyone. And then there are the people who are perhaps just observing. They're just scrolling on their phones, looking for connection, feeling a bit numb, feeling a bit disconnected, but not really sure what to do about it. They're just in their little world, observing the world. And the act of observing and keeping out of it is potentially heightening their feeling that they don't quite belong. They're not in it. They're not living it. They're just watching other people living their lives and feeling disconnected. So all of that is pretty bloody miserable. But all is not lost. All you have to do is put your phone down. Recognise that while phones can be a great tool, potentially for connection, the right kinds of connection, not that. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's a tool of disconnection. Sometimes it's a tool for dissatisfaction, a tool for envy, a tool for thinking that everyone else has got it together when you don't, when nothing could be further from the truth. How people present themselves online and how they are in real life are wildly different. Many people choose to try to put a good face on, present themselves in a good light, look like they're going out a lot, having an amazing life. And the reality is that they are just as lost, just as lonely, just as numb, just as scared of the world as you. You know, they've just put a better face on it. For that moment, that's all. You know, there's so much private pain going on in the world, you know. I can't remember now when Matthew Perry, the actor, when he passed away, if it was last year or the year before, or even this year, but I think it was last year, wasn't it? I don't remember now. But it was just incredibly sad. It's incredibly sad to see somebody who was full of life, full of witty quips, who seemed fun and jovial and upbeat, to hear that actually he was riddled with insecurity and really not very happy at all. And quite likely self-sabotaged his relationship with Julia Roberts because of his own fears and insecurities. And if you think that an actor who is enjoying incredible success is riddled with fears and insecurities, it shows us how there is no one who is immune. No one is immune from such things. You know, you can be an actor on a fantastic TV show, but if you have got your inner demons, etc., then they don't automatically just sort of dissolve into the night. It doesn't happen. You're going to have to work on those, whoever you are. And I think that was just a little bit of a lesson in that. It was just a reminder that all the success in the world, all the fame and the money and God knows what else, it doesn't make you immune to that inner voice that we all have. There's an inner voice of self-sabotage, an inner voice of doubt. Everybody has it, that can sometimes be a bit louder than it should be. You know, if it's somewhere in the background rumbling away, well then that's okay. But there are days when perhaps we can all feel a bit more vulnerable, a little bit more lost. And that voice can just be a bit more amplified. And we need to fight back against it, each and every one of us, because everyone is worthy. Everyone has got something to offer. No one should make you feel less than worthy, especially yourself, you know? So endless scrolling then helps to feed that inner voice, and it doesn't help your confidence. The best way to help that is put your phone down, go out, arrange to meet people in real life. You know, try and do that an awful lot more. Get out in nature, because nature heals. So getting out for walks in nature, going swimming, doing things, getting back into your body, getting out of your head, overthinking, analysing, where we've all been perhaps a little bit during COVID, etc. Getting more out of your head, into your heart and into your body, coming back to your senses, enjoying the world and taking notice of small things. You know, I read a little while ago, and I don't know if this is true, but allegedly Generation Z, because they are so overwhelmed by the world, because their phones are pinging all the time with God knows what notifications, sometimes they switch their phones off. So this story went, and they put their phones down and they just sit in silence for a quarter of an hour, say, doing nothing, absolutely doing nothing, because they recognise that they are in overwhelm, and this is the knee-jerk response to overwhelm, to just sit in silence and do nothing. And it's not a bad response. It's very similar to mindfulness, whereby you just be present in your body, in your mind, in your heart, just be present and take notice of the world around you. Say in your mind, but just be present. You know, it's a very similar thing. Meditation, it's similar to that. Mindfulness and meditation. These are two tools that are so, so vital in today's world. Just sitting and taking notice. Taking notice of very small things can be so incredibly healing. So if you're out on a walk and you just listen to birdsong, or if you're going to sleep at night and there's an owl outside your window, just paying attention to that, you know, or being out on a walk, noticing an animal, and just sitting with that. Just paying attention to what it gets up to, you know. Poetry, this is why I love poetry as well. There's all sorts of poetry out there. There's all sorts of poetry snobs out there. I love nature poems. I love poems that make you more mindful, that get you back into your heart space and out of your head. I love poems like that. Because again, there's that moment of mindfulness where you're feeling perhaps a bit of oneness with nature, where you just stop and you're still. And allegedly in this video with this young lad, it was in the video, but allegedly in his encounter with Jesus, Jesus had said to him that one antidote to all of this was stillness, getting off your phones and just stillness, just being, allowing yourself to commune with the world around you, the unseen world, because we're all of us spiritual beings. I say this a lot in my videos because I believe 100% this to be true. We're all of us eternal spiritual souls. We're having a human experience. Our souls are, you know, filtered in these bodies, in these temporary human bodies for a time. And then we merge back into oneness. We go back to wherever we come from in between different incarnations. And our souls are communing with nature all of the time, with God, with nature all of the time. Nature is in communication with us and we are with nature as well. That's what I believe, because I believe in the theory of oneness, which says we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. So this illusion of separation then, it's an illusion. It's not necessarily real. This world of matter makes it real. Your ego makes it real. Your left hemisphere of your brain makes the separation feel real, but it isn't real. And you find that out for yourself. It isn't a theory that's untestable. You can test it for yourself, and you test it out with meditation. Practices like meditation, prayer, stillness, meditation, where you're helping to calm your nervous system. You're helping to calm the left brain chatter that's incessant. You know, they call it the monkey mind. When you learn to meditate, what you'll realise initially is that you can't meditate. That's normal. You push through that. No one can meditate. Initially, not many people can. You have to work at it. It's practice, because you're literally calming down the incessant chatter and you're focusing onto one thing. And that's kind of a big deal, right? That's quite a lot of work, because your mind is constantly chattering away. But when you do this and you come into this place of stillness, what you notice is you start to notice an expanded awareness. And very often, having sat in meditation in various groups some years ago, one of the questions was, you know, where does someone begin and where does someone else end? Because they noticed their perception of their bodies, of the them that occupied their bodies, was changing, was expanding beyond the body. And sometimes they would say, well, I wasn't sure where I ended and I began, where other people end and I begin. My consciousness seemed to go beyond the body. So these are testable theories. And when you go into meditation, when you do it a few times, when you start to realize at first it's just about disciplining the mind to focus and calm down. But after a while, what you might notice is a profound sense of peace beyond anything you've ever experienced. And with that, a profound sense of love beyond what you believe love to have felt like before as well. This sort of transpersonal love, a love that's greater than what can be contained in your own heart. And a great joy as well. So very positive, lovely feelings. An expanded sense of awareness. And greater insight will arise from that. There's a book, I forgot what it's called. It's a sort of basic book about meditation and basics of Buddhism. And it's literally, the thoughts in the book are that the basic tenet, if you had to boil it down to any one thing, meditation is simply awareness. It's greater awareness. It all starts with your awareness, your intention. And so I think in these troubling times, having a meditation practice is really, really important. And if you really can't meditate and get fed up with it, then I think having a mindfulness practice is really important, where you go outside, get into nature in a lovely spot and just sit and do the thing where you put your phone down, switch it off for 15 minutes. Pre-warn your friends if you have to that you are going to be not available for 15 minutes. Best perhaps not switch it off if you're in an area that isn't completely 100% safe. Maybe just put your phone on silent. But otherwise, just, switch it off, put it on silent, put your phone down, and then just sit. Deep belly breathing is also really good. So if you breathe in and out from your belly until your belly rises and falls, your belly becomes completely inflated and then deflated, and do that really, really slowly, maybe 3 to 5 times every morning and every night. Just very slow inhale, hold, very slow exhale. And that's one very simple way of calming down your nervous system as well. It's a way of taking you out of fight, flight, freeze and fawn. It's a way of taking you out of that, because I think an awful lot of people nowadays are probably stuck in fight, probably, but fight, flight, freeze or fawn. They're probably stuck in that sort of, heightened level of awareness, because such is the nature of the world today, where every time you pick up your phone, you've got notifications from your friends, you've got notifications from 1,000 different apps, you've got notifications of some terrible news story. You have to switch off. You have to develop good phone hygiene. You just have to, for good mental health hygiene. So make sure your phone is switched off easily an hour before bed. Make sure your phone is inaccessible for certain parts of the day that you are reading. Pick up a book. When was the last time you picked up a book? When was the last time you just sat and listened to beautiful music? When was the last time you created something, Do the things that move you. Do what's in your heart to do. If you're a singer, sing more songs. If you play an instrument, do that. If you'd like to learn one, do that. It doesn't matter if you're, say, 60 or 70 years old. You want to try something new. There's never an age to stop trying something new. Anything to put a bit of joy back into your life and a bit of happiness back into your life, because these are such tumultuous times, and knowing that you're not alone, doing things that connect you to other people as well. So join a group. What groups can you join? That's one good thing about our phones, right? We've got meetup apps. We've got groups on Facebook. We've got all sorts of ways to connect with other people. Find a thing and go to a thing and talk to people at the thing. You know, don't sit in your room and scroll endlessly. Don't do it. Don't spend hours doing it. If you're tired and you think, oh, I just want to do it because it's just a way to decompress, maybe try and find some other way to decompress, and then be strict with yourself. You know, so say allow yourself 10 minutes on your phone and think about what you want to do while you're on it. So if you want to buy something, know what you want to buy. Maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes, say, on social media. Don't allow yourself to get drawn into arguments. If you're one of those people that goes down every rabbit hole and gets really drawn in, don't get drawn in. Be strict with yourself. If you see a news story and you'd really like to comment, don't comment. Just leave it alone. And try and remember as well that, say if you're on social media, especially X, everyone has an agenda. Everyone has an agenda, pretty much. So if you're reading someone's impassioned response to a news story and it sounds horrific, just pause, read it again, have a little think. At least with X, there's community notes. So sometimes people put their own spin on things and it can be wildly different. It's their own imagination, it's their own spin for whatever reason, to incite more clicks, to incite more outrage, etc. People are either engagement farming, or they're rage baiting, or they are coming up with, I don't know, some form of post to try to get people to respond. There's always a reason, there's always a hook, there's always something going on. You don't have to respond, you know. And if responding is taking you away from yourself, it's taking you away from what you love to do, and it's sucking the joy out of your life, definitely stop them. Be strict with yourself, you know, set timetables for what you want to do. Have a plan. Do you have like a 5-year plan? Everyone should have a 5-year plan, and then review it annually. You know, so have your 5-year plan. What do you want to achieve in the next 5 years? And then break it down. So how are you going to meet that achievement? How do you break it down? Over the months of the year? How do you break it down over the weeks? Then over the days, then the hours in a day, and so on, to make that an achievable goal. What are you going to do? What steps are you going to do to start achieving your goal? And if your inner voice is going, oh, I can't do that for any reason, shut your inner voice up and get cracking. The inner critic needs to be squashed. Unless you know absolutely it's not your area. So, for example, many people are naturally gifted in one type of area. For me, it was always art and English. For some people, it's maths and science and so on. And so if I were to try and really apply myself to maths, I know it would fall over. It just wouldn't work. I want to work on the things I'm naturally good at. And some people like to try and work on their weaknesses, and that's fine. But I think overall, I think people should play to their strengths. So think about what you're good at, think about what your goal is, and have a personal goal. Have a goal just for joy, just for the sheer hell of it, just for fun, as well as like serious goals for, say, your career and things like that. What do you want to do for fun? What do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? You know, learn to play a mad instrument, learn to speak a language. It doesn't really matter so long as you've got a goal and you're doing something fun and something that interests you, something that lights you up. You're not alone, and you're never alone, even if you really feel it. And if you really feel it, if you're feeling really bad and you're really struggling with your mental health, you're on your phone a lot, you know you're numbing out, you're not having a good time, you're in some sort of cycle, you can't seem to break it, please reach out to somebody, reach out to someone, and do that as soon as you can. There's no shame in it. You are not alone. Mental health problems have never been so bad as they are in the world now. And the mental health services in some countries, in England at the moment, they're not so great in some areas, unfortunately. They're just not that well funded. So please reach out. Please reach out to whoever you can, your friends, your family. Reach out and see if you can get help from mental health services as well. Find what help is there available to you and reach out for it. And if no help is forthcoming and you're hanging on in there, find someone to talk to who will sit with you sometimes, if you can, so that you feel a little bit less alone, because everybody is struggling in this day and age with something. Everyone is struggling with something. So do what you can to find what help is available. And if there isn't, see what alternative help might be on offer as well, and reach out and talk to people. You know, I really think that talking helps as well. Sometimes it can just make you feel a bit less alone. You know, we need to work on that connection. I think we need to work on getting back out there in the real world. It doesn't help that so many pubs are closing across England, across the UK. The economy is still not in good shape. We need to find ways of connection, all sorts of ways of connection. And so I think just try and do what you can. Just try and do what you can. If you feel a bit overwhelmed, just take it in bite-sized steps. Have a little look on a meetup app. See what's local. See what's going on. You can just meet up with friends for a drink. Just meet up with brand new people. You don't know who they are. But just that first step that takes you away from your phone, that takes you outside, you know, shows you the world isn't quite as scary and people are still meeting up. And it's the most important thing that we can do as humans. You know, the world is going to increasingly become more digitized. It's going to increasingly become more about being on our phones. Potentially, if there's a digital ID, and God help us, let's hope there's not a social credit system as well. Because you see Chinese people, they're just scrolling to check what their score is all the time. It becomes a compulsion, you know. And we want to push back against that as much as possible. Getting out in nature is one way to do it. You know? Modern day life has divorced us from nature, and it's sort of cleaved us from our own wildness within as well. It's cleaved us from nature, divorced us from the nature that's within our souls. You know, all of us have a little bit of wildness of spirit somewhere. We've all got a bit of creativity of spirit. We've all got hearts, we've got emotions, we've got the spirit, the soul. And yet modern day life is making everything all about a very sort of corporate, digital, AI world. It's very sort of sterile and less fun, less creative. So what can you do to bring a bit of creativity and a bit of joy back into the world, back into your soul, back into you? And to know that you're worth it, to know that you matter. You're not here to just be a consumer and scroll on your phone and see what everyone else is getting up to. They're not getting up to so much. They're posting lovely pictures, but are they even present in the moment? You know, when you see people at concerts and they're all there holding up their phones, the minute you pick your phone up to record a concert is the minute that you disconnect your heart from the moment. It really is. I've noticed that doing it myself. 1 minute you're there and you're enjoying it and you're loving it because you're present in mind, body, spirit. You are present in that moment, loving the music, having an amazing time. The minute you think, oh, I must record this, you pick up your phone and you're recording. And now you're focused on your recording, and it just takes you out of that moment, takes you out of being present completely, just removes a little bit of joy, a little bit of happiness and immediacy from the whole thing. Why? So you've got a recording, you're never going to look at it anyway, you're going to delete it in a year. There's no point. We are so hell-bent on trying to record our moments rather than live them, rather than feel them and express them. We're so busy trying to prove to other people what we're doing, but we're not even able to be present with what we're doing with ourselves and our hearts. You know? So it's just about coming back to you. Who are you? What makes you tick? What do you love to do? When did you last do it? Let's get and do that. We really need to start creating again. Finding creative movements, finding a bit of spirit, a bit of chutzpah, a bit of fun, you know, a bit of rebellion, a spirit of rebellion in a fun way. Like back in the day when you had your punks and things like that in the 80s. We don't seem to have that same spirit anymore of rebellion, of just looking at the world and going, it's all a bit corporate and homogenous, isn't it? We need a bit of life. We need a bit of spirit. We need a bit of love. And we need some fun, you know? Because big corporations, they suck the joy out of things. They kind of just do. You know, when you hear about big companies that make movies, like, say, Disney, and then they have their test audiences where they test out a particular ending, etc. of a film. And if the test audience doesn't respond in a positive way, then they change it. So they're literally completely trying to sort of almost force or engineer the perfect sort of reaction to try and milk a product, to try and milk as much money from the thing as possible. And sometimes in doing that, they just suck all the fun and the creativity and the spontaneity out of the thing. They try and make it this sort of tick box exercise, this sort of spreadsheet, this sort of rule-based thing. And it just sucks the soul, just sucks the joy out of the thing. You know? And we don't want to see a world increasingly like that. But all of us play a role. All of us play a role in this world. And we shape the world around us to some degree with our choices, with the choices of what films we buy, of what things we get up to. And we all of us have some degree of autonomy over our lives. Being passive consumers is a really great way to lead to poor mental health outcomes. It really is. The more passive you feel, the less you actually do, the worse you're going to feel. So get involved, do something. What do you want to do? Do you want to jump out of a plane? Do you want to make a song? Do you want to sing? Do you want to paint? It doesn't matter if you're bad at first at whatever it is that you're doing. We're all bad at first. You know, nobody starts off brilliantly. That's the point, right? It's a point of learning. You start from somewhere. It doesn't matter if you're trying to learn art. I was part of, I joined up to some beginner art group on Facebook ages ago, when I started picking up paints again. And the sheer amount of people who would come on and say, well, I can't start because it's too overwhelming and I can't paint very well, so I just stopped. And they see other people paint like, you know, gods. And they become so intimidated and they say, well, I can't do that, I'm not going to do that. And I'd be going, come on, if you want to do it, you're here for a reason, then you must start, and it doesn't matter. Every day you'll make improvements. If you just do a little bit every day or even once a week, in a year's time, you will have made improvements. And people do, and some people showed their work from, 1 year later. And sure enough, everyone can do something pretty much within that time frame. but you just have to start. And we all have to start with a real beginner mindset. Be a bit humble. Be prepared to fail, because failing is part of learning a new thing. Be prepared to fail again and again and again and again, but getting better, incrementally better as you go. And then the failures at some point become less, and your wins become a little bit more, and you start to see a bit of progress, and it gets a bit exciting. But you have to be prepared to perhaps make a bit of a fool of yourself, look a bit silly. It's a key part of it. But have fun with it, enjoy it. It doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter if you look a bit silly. No one will remember. And if you're enjoying yourself, that's all that matters. And equally, if you're prepared to put yourself out there and try a new thing, you're going to encourage somebody else who's equally feeling a bit shy or a bit silly or a bit awkward or a bit completely overwhelmed and think, oh, I can't do that. You know, we can all help inspire and uplift each other. So whoever you are tonight, however lonely, I'm just sending you all good wishes with this. You're not alone. You are not as alone as you think you are. You know, the world really is a more difficult place than it ever was. And you are not alone. You know, you're not alone. So just find something. Find a meetup. Find something to go to and see how you feel from there. If you enjoyed it, if you made a connection, and how that made you feel. And then maybe do it again next week, and so on. There's always something that you can do. You can go wild swimming, you know, that's something I want to do. Perhaps not in this cold weather where it's absolutely freezing, but eventually I'd like to. There's always something, you know. So yeah, I hope you're not feeling too down. If you're watching this, if you've been feeling a bit blue, if you've been endlessly scrolling, you know, stop scrolling. Get your 5-year plan. Think about what you want to achieve in 5 years. Write down something ludicrous. Write down your dreams. Doesn't matter. You know, if you aim high, I always think my dad always told me this as well. If you aim high in life, you're always going to get higher. You're always going to get something more than if you aim low. If you aim low, but say you miss the bottom rung of what you've aimed for, you're going to be somewhere on the floor, right? You're not going to have achieved very much at all. But if you aim high, chances are you're going to do better than you thought you would. None of us know what we're fully capable of if we never try. And I know full well that many older people, if they have any regrets at all, it tends to be regrets for the road not travelled. It tends to be regrets for the things they didn't do, not the things they tried. It's the things they didn't do. You know? It's always worth trying. If you try and fail, absolutely, there's no shame there. It's none at all. But if you never try to achieve your dream, you never try, chances are 20, 30, 40 years down the line, you're going to go, oh God, why didn't I do that thing? You know? So I hope this has helped someone. I've talked for far longer than I thought I was going to. You're never alone. You're never alone. It's just these damn phones and social media that make you feel like everybody else is having an absolutely amazing time, and that you're this lonely person stuck on your own, having a terrible life, feeling insecure. It ain't true. It ain't true. Many of your friends who are smiling away are feeling just as bad as you. They just happen to be out at a place, that's all. Some of them are having a good time though. So if you can get yourself out there, try and do that. Try and do that. And just recognise that everyone's got their fears, their insecurities, disappointments, things they're battling. Everyone's battling something. Just don't let that stop you from living. So take care. God bless. Be well. Bye.